We're surrounded by adverts that promises a blessed life. I did a really sort of very quick and unscientific Google search and came up with these. You can buy water for happy bodies, you can get yogurt for inner happiness, and you can get Right Move to find your happy. And from a few years ago, they're happy because they eat lard. Well, times changed perhaps, but to be fair, they did look happy. It's the fundamental way the advertising industry works. It works on the basis of two things. It makes you discontented with your present life, and it gives you a promise of a blessed life. And then they sell you whatever their product is. And because in us, there's often this sense of, there's got to be more than this, surely. Then we're all prone to wanting to buy whatever it may be. Yogurt, water, move house, or lard. And in the passage that Martha just read to us, Jesus speaks to his disciples and he says, you'll be blessed. Now you know these things. You'll be blessed if you do them. Now the word bless seems like a church word. It's a religious word. We don't use it very often outside, except perhaps as a code word. You know, if someone says, have a blessed day, you kind of guess that they might be a Christian. Otherwise, we don't really use that sort of language. We use the word happy. The Greek word for blessed is makarios, and it was just a regular word in the Greek language. And when they translated the Old Testament from Hebrew into Greek, and it talked about the blessed person, man, woman, of God, used this very natural word, happy. How happy you will be. When Matthew does his Beatitudes, happy are those who pure in heart, for they will see God. How blessed they are, we would say. How happy. In John's Gospel, there's twice that John uses this word. Just twice. Once in this passage that Martha read, and then at the end of the Gospel, towards the end of the Gospel, at the end of the 20th chapter, blessed are those who've not seen. It's in the context of Thomas wanting to see Jesus in order to believe. And John finishes that chapter by saying, blessed are those who've not seen and yet have believed. Twice, John uses the word happy or makarios, blessed. Once, if you do something, and once, if you believe something. If you do something and you believe something, it's the gateway to a blessed life. So let's look at what Martha read. What did Jesus know? And what did Jesus do? Well, what Jesus knew was this, that the time was now right. From chapter 13 through to chapter 19, we're going to be reading about events that happen on one evening. Just one evening. Those chapters span the last evening that Jesus spends with the disciples. And Jesus knows the hour has come now. And in John's Gospel, that's been sort of like staggered. You know, from, I think I said last time, from chapter 2, when his mum says, they've run out of wine, can you do a miracle, Jesus? And Jesus goes, my hour's not yet. This isn't the time. But he does it anyway. Well, now he knows the hour has come. He knows that it's God's time. He knows his Father. He knew his Father, and he knows that the Father knows him. And he knew his authority. He knew how he was going to use it. And he knew his destination. He was going to go to the cross, and through the cross and the resurrection, he was going to return to his Father. He knew where he was standing in relationship to his Father. He knew what the time was. He knew his Father. He was secure in his relationship with God. He knew the authority that God had given him, and he didn't need to use it inappropriately, and he knew his destination. And because he knew that, he wasn't afraid of acting like a servant. We talk about servant and service a lot in church. And I guess most of us, at some stage or other, have prayed some sort of prayer that goes, Jesus, I want to give you the whole of my life. And then someone comes and asks us to do something that's really annoying. And we say, well, I want to give you the whole of my life, but I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to have to get up early. You can have the whole of my life, but I don't want to get up early. But Jesus knew. He was secure. And so because of his own security in who he was, in what God had done for him and what God would do for him, well, John says, at this point of the evening, Jesus showed his love. He loved them to the end, or he loved them perfectly. It's an everyday moment. It's not religious in any shape or form, really. You know, it's not particularly something that feels holy. They've just got dirty feet. And they've been wandering around in the dust and the muck and the dog dirt of the day. And they're at supper, and none of them have said, I'll wash your feet. And you can imagine the scenario where they're all looking at each other going, well, I'm not going to do it. You know that sort of, do you ever hear yourself say, I always have to do it. I'm not going to do it again. And no one acts like the servant, but Jesus does. He shows them his love, and he took a towel and dressed himself like a servant, and he acted like a servant. This is Jesus showing them his love to the end. It's a rabbi acting like the lowliest servant. And John reports Jesus saying, if you know this and you do this, you'll be blessed. If you act like Jesus, you will be blessed. You will be happy. You will find what life is supposed to be about. You will know what the gateway to a life of thriving will look like. See, what Jesus does then, in that moment of bending down, wrapping a towel around his waist, bending down, taking the bowl of water and washing the feet, is it's a symbol, it's a picture of what he's done all along. And in Philippians, when Paul is writing to the church, he's at one point in that very short letter, you know this, but at one point he says, if you've had any benefit from being amongst one another, then make the way you think, make your mind the same as Jesus. And then he quotes a song or a hymn. And it's the hymn that says about being in the form of God, didn't count equality with God a thing to be grasped or held onto, but he emptied himself, and he was born in the likeness of men, and he took the form of a slave, and he was found in human form, and he humbled himself, and he became obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Therefore God exalted him, and he's bestowed on him the name that is above every name, so that the name of Jesus every knee should bow, every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. That worship song becomes a way of us looking at our own lives. It's an example. Paul says, just do it. Do what Jesus did. It's about not fearing a loss of your own reputation. It's not fearing what people think about you. It's about changing your nature from one of privilege and expectation to one that says, I'm not too big to serve you. I'm not too important. It doesn't matter who changed the toilet rolls this morning. It doesn't matter who went into the loo to find out whether there are enough toilet rolls for you. But it's easy, isn't it, to go to the toilet. This is a real life story, by the way. Just in case you're wondering. It's easy to go to the loo and go, there's no toilet roll. And come out and come to the pastor and go, Neil, there's no toilet roll. Now, I grant you, that is sometimes a bit of a disaster. But how tempting it is when the pastor says, well, can you go and put the toilet rolls in, all of them? And you go, I was only worried about my situation. It's not how easy it is to say, it's not my job to put toilet rolls out. There must be somebody's job, but it's not mine. I wonder how many of you would go home going, I can't believe it. I had to put all the toilet rolls out, all of them. I had to go in the men's loo, I had to go in the women's loo. We want to see Jesus. We want to hear his voice. And his voice says, you'll be blessed if you put the toilet rolls out. You'll be blessed if you don't stand on your own rights. You'll be blessed if you say, I can do that. You'll be blessed if you say to Kate, I can make a cake. Although only say that if you really can make a cake. All right. You'll be blessed if you go, do you know what, I can deal with the veggie options. You'll be blessed if you say, okay, I don't mind coming early and staying late. Because someone's got to clear the rubbish up, and I don't mind doing that. And we all know how easy it is to think, the fairies will do it. The clearing up fairies. Someone else. And Jesus says, you'll be blessed if you do them, because you'll be acting like me. In the midst of this, there's two really interesting events that happen, though, because there's one person who's really close to Jesus who says, Jesus, I don't want you to wash my feet. I don't want you to serve me like this. I don't want you on bended knee before me. And it's Peter. And the other person that's in the story is Judas. He's alluded to very briefly in the passage that Martha read. But actually, if you read the rest of the chapter, we know that, because John tells us, that this is the meal at which Judas decides, I'm out of here. It's not for me. There's Judas, who's destructive, and there's Peter, who's overconfident. Judas, we're told, it's the evening when Satan enters into Judas's heart. And he's watching what's going on. And I think that when you've been reading the Gospel of John, what you become aware of is that John, who's writing this Gospel much later, he's not forgotten what Judas was like. Judas, who was sort of like skimming off money from the common pot into his own pocket. Judas, who was always the cynical one, looking at what a woman has done in pouring out expensive perfume on Jesus and going, she's wasting this money. Judas, who at this point in the evening goes, I'm out. And I get a feeling that whatever's going on in his heart, he's saying at least, Jesus, this is not how it's supposed to be. If you're going to be so self-degrading, this doesn't look like a triumphant king. I don't want to follow you. If this is what Christianity is like, it's as though Judas was saying, I'm not part of it. I don't want it to be like this. I thought Jesus would make my life better. I thought Jesus would make us winners. I thought Jesus would make it all right. If it's going to involve this sort of humiliation, I'm out of here. And he does go. And he goes and he betrays Jesus. And then he kills himself. It's the final act of self-destruction. And Satan, the accuser, has been pushing him all the time to say, you're better than this. It's got to be better than this. Yeah, we want freedom, but it can't happen like this. If it's about service like that, I'm out. And Judas leaves. And Peter's just ridiculous. Peter says, I don't want you to wash my feet, Jesus. And Jesus says, if I can't wash your feet, then to be honest, we ain't got a relationship. And Peter then goes, well, can I have a full bath then? It's like, oh, Peter. It's at the end of this chapter, by the way, that Peter's going to say to Jesus, Jesus, I'll lay down my life for you. And Jesus will say to Peter, I've got to tell you, boy, you'll hear the cock crow 3 times and you will deny that you ever knew me. What gets in the way of us serving, what gets us in the way of looking like Jesus, is when we start to look around us and go, 2 things. Firstly, looks like a bunch of losers. It's not working. Over the years, I've met people who said on fairly regular basis, I don't think it's worth being a Christian because it's not working. And you say to them, well, what did you expect? Well, I thought my life would just get better. I thought everything I wanted in life would just come my way. And it's kind of like, sometimes I've kind of wanted to say, I'm sorry because I didn't make it clear enough. Because the deal was that you'd take up your cross and you'd follow Jesus. That was the invitation. And for other people, they're so overconfident about what they're going to do for God that it becomes like, but I don't want the humiliation of having Jesus wash my feet. I want to be the strong one. I don't feel confident in just allowing Jesus to make me feel vulnerable. I mean, we live in a different culture, don't we? But I know that if I went round now, and I'm not going to, if I went round now with a bucket and a flannel and said, could you take your shoes off for a minute? Half of it, I mean, I know some podiatrists, we've got podiatrists in amongst us, but half of you would go, I don't want to take my shoes off. And you'd have a range of reasons. How many of you have got ugly feet? Yeah, thanks. There's at least one guy who's unashamed to say, Rob's got ugly feet. It's kind of like, I don't want you to see my ugly feet. How many of you have got hard skin and a bit rubbishy on the underside of your feet? Yeah? My feet are a mess, I've got to tell you, folks. And it's kind of like, I wouldn't want you to have to deal with that. And to be honest, I would feel, if you did it to me, I would feel out of control. Because I'd have to just sit there. While you were all welcoming one another, I'd made a bit of a mess of this thing around my head. And it took 3 men to sort it out. It took Steve and Jay and me. And I was just the passive partner. And Jay said, just turn around. And then they put it on you. And I joked to say, when people do that, I feel very vulnerable. And it's true, I do. And Peter goes, I don't want to feel vulnerable with you, Jesus. I'll lay down my life for you. I'll do the big stuff. I'll do the heroic stuff. I just don't want to feel vulnerable. I don't know, but I think I know what Peter was doing. And Jesus speaks to Peter, the one who wants to be strong, the one who wants to follow, the one who thinks he knows what should happen. And he says, allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to receive from Jesus so that you can be vulnerable enough to go and do it for others. There's a quote that you might have seen before. Everyone wants to save the world. No one wants to do the dishes. I'll give my life, but I want to do it on my terms. I'll do the big things for God, but I don't want to do the small things. I'll do what I think should happen. A few years ago, we said that as a church, this is the way we wanted to describe ourselves at the time, and this is what we wanted to continue to be. A growing community of whole life disciples, alert to God's leading, paying careful attention to one another and the moment we're in, so that we can be good news to those around us. We wanted to be people who paid careful attention to one another. So I wonder, when Jesus says, you'll be blessed if you do this. Love one another. As I've loved you, you must love one another. I wonder what it would look like for you. I wonder who's around you and how you would bless them. And I was thinking of just sort of like just very quick list of things that perhaps would bless. A phone call more than a text. A call to say, I just wondered how you were doing. And I just wanted to tell you that I've been thinking about you. A text is efficient, isn't it? A WhatsApp message you can do when you want to do it. Do you ever get yourself into a situation with WhatsApp messages and texts where then they start texting back? And then you text back, and then they text back again, and you're going, whoa, stop, I didn't want a conversation. Just wanted to tell you I cared about you. Don't want to talk to you. WhatsApp and text is efficient. It's on my terms. A call? Maybe. Flowers sent. An invitation for a drink. A gift. I got a friend of mine who very occasionally annoys Maggie by sending me books that he thinks I should read. And he adds to the list of books in my office. And he does it just to bless me. I'm open to being blessed. I'm just saying. What about the blessing of forgiveness? A blessing that says, I'm not going to keep holding this against you. What about the blessing of being involved? The blessing of service in church. The blessing of giving your time. The blessing of slowing down. I want to be blessed. And Jesus said in John's Gospel, there's two ways. One, if you trust him, and if you do this. It's simple. It's just very difficult.